The galaxy had known war for 10,000 years. Every species that rose to the stars eventually learned the same hard truth. The void between worlds was not empty. It was filled with hunters. Ambassador Keth Nora stood at the viewing window of Station 12, watching the blue and green world slowly turn below. Earth. The humans called it Earth, such a simple name for a world that had changed everything. She remembered the day the human ships first appeared at the edge of Vexari space. Her people had been fighting the Dominion for 3 generations. The war was lost. Everyone knew it. The Vexari fleet was broken. Their colonies burned. Their children hid in deep caves while Dominion hunters searched for them above. Then the humans came. Keth Nora had been a young officer then, barely old enough to serve on a warship. She remembered the fear when the unknown vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel. More enemies, everyone thought. The Vexari had no friends. No one in the galaxy had friends. There were only predators and prey. But the human ships did not fire. They broadcast a message in every known language and many unknown ones. The message was simple. It said only this: "We are the United Earth Alliance. We offer friendship to all who wish it. We offer protection to all who need it. We ask nothing in return except that you do no harm to others. Will you accept?" The Vexari High Council laughed at first. It must be a trap, they said. No species offered protection without demanding payment. No species risked their own lives for strangers. It was not how the galaxy worked. But the Dominion fleet was coming. 300 warships, enough to glass every Vexari world. The Council had no choice. They accepted the human offer, expecting betrayal. What they got instead was Admiral Saracen. Keth Nora would never forget watching the battle from her small ship. The human fleet numbered only 40 vessels against 300 Dominion warships. It should have been a slaughter. The Dominion commanders were already planning the celebrations. They died confused. Human ships moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They were smaller than Dominion cruisers, but they were fast, so impossibly fast, and their weapons cut through Dominion shields like claws through water. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Dominion fleet was scattered wreckage, and not a single human ship had been destroyed. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every Vexari screen that day. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She said, "The Dominion will not trouble you again. We will patrol your borders. We will protect your worlds. We ask only one thing: be kind to those weaker than yourselves." That was 50 years ago. Now Keth Nora was old, and she was the Vexari ambassador to Earth. She had spent 5 decades watching the humans, trying to understand them. She still did not fully succeed. The door behind her opened. She turned to see Captain James Wright enter the observation room. He was a tall human with brown skin and a warm smile. He was also the commander of the human ship that would carry her to the Galactic Assembly tomorrow. "Ambassador," he said with a small bow, "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, Captain. I was simply thinking." "About tomorrow." "About everything." Keth Nora turned back to the window. "Do you know how many species have accepted your offer of alliance and protection?" 47, last I heard. 49 as of this morning. The Threll and the Nakveen have both joined. Keth Nora made a sound that humans had learned was Vexari laughter. "When I was young, both those species were Dominion slaves. Now they are free, because of you." Captain Wright walked to stand beside her. "Not just us. Everyone who stands together makes us all stronger." "That is what you humans always say, but you know it is not fully true." Keth Nora looked at him with her 4 silver eyes. "The Vexari could not have freed the Threll. We do not have the power. The Kellish could not have protected the Nakveen. They are barely able to protect themselves. It is humans who fight. It is humans who die. For species you had never met. For worlds you had never seen." Wright was quiet for a moment. "Would you like to know why?" "I have been trying to learn why for 50 years. We remember." Kethnora tilted her head. Remember what? Being alone, being afraid. Wright looked out at the stars. Human history is full of darkness, ambassador, war, slavery, cruelty. We did terrible things to each other, but we also remember what it felt like to have someone help us when we needed it most. A stranger offering food, a neighbor protecting a family that was not their own. Small kindnesses that changed everything. But that was between your own species. Does it matter? Wright turned to face her. When we reached the stars and found other life, we had a choice. We could be like the Dominion. We could take what we wanted and destroy anyone who resisted. Our weapons were strong enough. We could have built an empire of fear. Why did you not? Because we had already seen where that path leads. We had walked it ourselves and we knew the ending. Only ash and regret. Wright smiled sadly. So we chose differently. We decided that if we were going to meet other species, we would meet them as friends, and if they needed help, we would help them. Not because we expected payment, not because we wanted power, but because it was right. Kethnora was silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "Tomorrow, at the assembly, the Dominion will demand that the alliance be dissolved. They will say humans are dangerous. They will say you are conquering the galaxy by kindness instead of force. What will you say in response?" "The truth." Kethnora placed one of her 4 hands on Wright's shoulder. "I will tell them that humanity offered alliance and protection to every species that accepted their hand. I will tell them that you asked for nothing in return except that we do no harm to others. And I will tell them that in 50 years, no human has ever broken that promise." She turned back to the window. "The Dominion built their power on slavery and death. You built yours on friendship and sacrifice. Tomorrow, the galaxy will have to choose which example they wish to follow. And if they choose the Dominion..." Kethnora made the Vexari sound of certainty. "They will not, because every species that has touched humanity has felt what I felt 50 years ago. Hope. For the first time in 10,000 years of war, we felt hope." The stars continued to shine outside the window. Somewhere out there, Dominion fleets were gathering. Somewhere out there, species were suffering under cruel masters. And somewhere out there, human ships were traveling to help them. Because that was what humans did. The Galactic Assembly Station was the largest structure ever built by any species. It hung in the void between 3 different arm regions of the galaxy, a neutral meeting place where all could gather. It was ancient. No one knew who had built it originally. Every spacefaring species had used it for as long as records existed. Today it was full. Kethnora walked through the central chamber with Captain Wright at her side. Representatives from over 200 species filled the great hall. Some flew on wings of crystal. Some floated in tanks of liquid methane. Some were so small they needed to be projected on screens to be seen. The diversity of life was overwhelming. But the room was divided. On one side sat the 49 species of the Human Alliance. They were arranged not by power or importance, but by the order in which they had joined. The Vexari, being first, sat nearest to the human delegation. Admiral Chen herself was there, older now but still sharp-eyed. On the other side sat the Dominion and their subjects. The Dominion were massive creatures, 3 times the size of humans, with thick gray skin and 6 limbs. They had conquered more worlds than any other species in history. They sat in seats of polished bone because the Dominion liked to remind everyone what happened to those who defied them. The High Speaker of the Dominion rose. His name was Vrathkan, and he had personally ordered the deaths of millions. His voice was deep and filled the chamber. "We call this assembly to address the human question," he said. "For 50 years, the humans have spread their influence across the galaxy. They claim to offer friendship. They claim to offer protection. But what they truly offer is subjugation by another name." Murmurs rose from the neutral species who had not joined either side. Vrathkan continued, "The Dominion has ruled for 1,000 generations. We bring order to chaos. We bring purpose to the weak. The humans bring only disruption. They arm our slaves. They shelter our enemies. They make war against the natural order of things." He pointed one massive limb at Admiral Chen. "This woman has destroyed more Dominion ships than any enemy in history. Her fleets patrol space that is rightfully ours. Her soldiers stand on worlds that should kneel before us." Admiral Chen did not respond. She simply sat with her hands folded, watching. Wrath Khan turned to address the whole assembly. "I call upon all species to declare the human alliance a threat to galactic peace. I call for sanctions. I call for isolation. Let them rot on their single world until they learn their place." He sat down. The chamber was very quiet. Kethnora rose to speak. She felt the weight of every eye upon her. She was small compared to the Dominion. Her people were not warriors, but she had spent 50 years learning from humans, and humans had taught her something important. Sometimes the smallest voice speaks the loudest truth. "The Dominion speaks of order," she began. "But what they call order we call slavery. What they call purpose we call death." She looked around the chamber. "I am old enough to remember the time before humans came. We lived in fear. Every species lived in fear. The Dominion took what they wanted and we could do nothing. We had no friends. We had no allies. We had only ourselves alone against the darkness." She turned to face Wrath Khan directly. "Then the humans came, and they offered us something we had never known: choice. They offered alliance and protection to every species that accepted their hand. They asked nothing in return except that we do no harm to others." Wrath Khan made a sound of contempt. "Pretty words, but what is the truth behind them? The humans take your resources. They take your best minds. They make you dependent on their protection." "Do they?" Kethnora moved to the center of the chamber. "Let me tell you what I have seen in 50 years. When the Vexari joined the Alliance, our industry was broken. Humans helped us rebuild. They gave us technology freely. They trained our engineers. They asked for nothing in payment." She gestured to another delegation. "The Kellish joined 10 years after us. Their world was dying, poisoned by Dominion mining. Humans sent ships filled with scientists and doctors. They spent 20 years cleaning the poison. The Kellish offered payment. The humans refused." Another gesture. "The Trenva were refugees fleeing the destruction of their home system. They had nothing but their lives and their culture. Humans gave them a world, an entire world, one of their own colonies, given freely to a species they had just met." Kethnora turned slowly, looking at every delegation. "This is what the Dominion calls subjugation. This is what they call a threat to peace, kindness, generosity, friendship without conditions." She stopped and faced Wrath Khan again. "The Dominion is afraid, not because humans are conquerors, but because humans have shown the galaxy another way to live, and that terrifies them." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted. Some agreed with Kethnora, others supported the Dominion. The neutral species argued among themselves. Through it all, Admiral Chen sat quietly, watching, waiting. The assembly continued for 3 days. Both sides presented evidence. Both sides made arguments. The neutral species asked endless questions. On the morning of the 4th day, the vote was called. The results shocked everyone. 112 species voted to recognize the human alliance as legitimate. 63 voted to support the Dominion's proposal. 41 abstained. The human alliance had won. But the victory was not complete. As the results were announced, Wrath Khan rose from his seat. His voice was like thunder. "The Dominion does not accept this vote. We do not recognize the authority of this assembly to judge us, and we do not fear the humans or their weak allies." He turned to face Admiral Chen. "You have won a vote, human, but votes mean nothing in the void. Only power means something, and the Dominion has power you cannot imagine." He walked toward the exit, his delegation following. At the door he stopped and looked back. War is coming. We will crush your alliance. We will burn your worlds. We will remind the galaxy what true strength looks like. And when we are done, there will be no more votes. There will be no more choice. There will be only the Dominion forever. He left, the door closed behind him. The chamber was silent. Then Admiral Chen stood. She was 80 years old now, but her voice was steady. The Dominion has chosen war. They believe they will win because they have more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. They believe strength comes from violence. She looked around the chamber at the species who had voted for the alliance, at the species who had abstained, even at the empty seats where the Dominion's subjects had sat. They are wrong. Strength comes from standing together, from protecting each other, from believing that every life has value, no matter how small or strange. She smiled, and it was the same smile she had worn 50 years ago. The human alliance does not want war, but we will not abandon our friends. We will not break our promises, and we will not let the Dominion take the galaxy back into darkness. She turned to her own delegation. Send the signal. Activate Protocol Guardian. Captain Wright, who stood nearby, spoke into his communicator. Within moments, reports began coming in. Human ships were moving throughout the galaxy. They were taking positions at every Alliance world. They were preparing to defend species that had trusted them. And they were not alone. The Vexari fleet, rebuilt over 50 years, was joining them. The Kellish Defense Force, small but determined, was mobilizing. The Trenva, who had promised never to let another species face destruction alone, were sending every ship they had. 49 species standing together. Against the Dominions won. The war for the galaxy had begun. 6 months passed. The war was brutal. The Dominion struck first, as everyone expected. Their fleets attacked 3 Alliance worlds simultaneously. They expected quick victories. They found something else. At Vexar Prime, the combined human and Vexari fleet met the Dominion assault. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Dominion had lost 40 ships. The Alliance had lost 12, but the planet was safe. At Kellish 7, a single human battle group held against overwhelming odds for 3 days. Reinforcements arrived on the 4th day. The Dominion was pushed back. At the Trenva colony world, something unexpected happened. The Dominion fleet arrived to find not just Alliance ships waiting, but ships from species that had never joined the Alliance. Neutral species. Species who had watched the Assembly vote and seen the Dominion threaten war. They had made their choice. The war continued. Planets changed hands, ships were destroyed, lives were lost, but slowly, steadily, the tide turned. Because the Dominion had made a mistake, they thought their subjects would stay loyal out of fear. They were wrong. When the Alliance offered freedom, species rose up. When the Alliance offered protection, slaves threw off their chains. The Dominion was not fighting one enemy. They were fighting everyone they had ever hurt, and that was a lot of enemies. Admiral Chen directed the war from her flagship, the United Earth ship Hope. She had chosen that name 50 years ago, and it had never seemed more appropriate. Every day, more species joined the Alliance. Every day, the Dominion grew weaker. But the price was high. Alliance ships were destroyed. Alliance soldiers died. Whole colonies were lost before help could arrive. Chen felt every death like a wound. These people had trusted humanity. They had trusted her. She would not let them down. In her quarters, late one night, she received a visitor. It was Keth Nara, who had been serving as a special advisor since the war began. Admiral, the ambassador said, "I have news." "Good or bad?" "Both." Keth Nara sat down heavily. She was old too and tired. "The good news is that the Dominion's inner council is fracturing. Vrathkan is losing control. Several of their member species are considering surrender." "And the bad news?" "Vrathkan has ordered a final assault. He is gathering every ship the Dominion has left, every weapon. He intends to strike at Earth itself." Chen was silent for a moment, then she nodded. We knew this would come. Can you stop him? That depends. Chen pulled up a star map. How many ships does he have? 500, maybe more. And how many do we have to defend Earth? Counting all Alliance forces that can reach Earth in time, perhaps 300. Chen studied the map. Then we'll have to be clever. Kethnora watched her. You do not seem afraid. I'm terrified, Chen smiled. But I've been terrified before. It never stopped me from doing what needed to be done. What do you need from the Alliance? Everything you can give, every ship, every soldier, every species willing to stand beside us. Chen looked up. This is what we promised, Ambassador. Alliance and protection to everyone who accepted our hand. It's time to see if the galaxy remembers what we did for them. Kethnora stood. They remember, I will make certain of it. She left. Chen sat alone in her quarters, staring at the stars. The final battle was coming, and humanity would face it the same way they had faced everything else. Together, the Dominion fleet arrived in Earth's solar system on a cold morning in January. 500 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They formed a massive wall of metal and fire, bristling with weapons. At their center was the Dominion flagship, a monster of a vessel that was itself larger than many fleets. Vrathkan stood on its bridge, watching the blue world in the distance. Earth, the human homeworld, he would enjoy destroying it. But first, he had to deal with the defenders. The Alliance fleet was waiting. 300 ships, arranged in defensive formations around Earth and its moon. Admiral Chen's flagship was at their center. Human ships surrounded her, but they were not alone. Vexari cruisers held the right flank. Kellish destroyers guarded the left. Trenva carriers launched fighters in endless streams. And behind them, arriving every hour, were more ships. Ships from species that had joined the Alliance during the war. Ships from species that had never officially joined, but had decided to stand with humanity anyway. By the time the battle began, the Alliance fleet numbered 350 ships. Still outnumbered, but not by as much as Vrathkan had hoped. The Dominion opened fire first. Space lit up with weapons fire. Ships exploded. Shields flickered and died. The first exchange claimed lives on both sides. But the Alliance did not break. They held their lines. They returned fire. They protected each other. Admiral Chen's voice sounded across every Alliance ship. Hold together. Protect your neighbors. We survive by standing as one. The battle raged for hours. The Alliance strategy was clear. They were not trying to destroy the Dominion fleet. They were trying to wear it down, delay it, make it pay for every meter of space it took. And it was working. Dominion ships fell, not quickly but steadily. The Alliance's smaller ships were faster, more maneuverable. Human targeting systems were more accurate, and every time a Dominion ship tried to break through, it found not one enemy but 5, all working together. Vrathkan grew frustrated. Focus on the human flagship. Kill Chen and the others will scatter. The Dominion fleet reformed. They pushed toward hope with everything they had. Alliance ships threw themselves in the way. Vexari cruisers were destroyed. Kellish destroyers vanished in fire, but others took their place. The hope was hit multiple times. Damage reports flooded in. Chen ignored them. Hold position, she ordered. Let them come. Admiral Captain Wright said from beside her. They're almost in range. I know, Chen smiled. Send the signal. Wright nodded and spoke into his communicator. All Alliance forces, execute Protocol Final Shield. Every Alliance ship stopped firing. Every ship turned to face the Dominion fleet, and every ship accelerated. Not to attack, to shield. The ships formed a living barrier around Earth. They overlapped their shields. They locked their positions. They became a wall. Vrathkan laughed. They sacrificed themselves. Excellent, we will kill them all at once. The Dominion fleet opened fire with everything it had. The barrier shuddered, ships exploded, but the barrier held. Because new ships were arriving. Every minute, more ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Not just Alliance ships, ships from across the galaxy. Ships from species who had heard what was happening and had come to help. Neutral species who remembered what humanity had done for others. Species who had never joined the Alliance but had watched from afar. Species who had seen the Dominion threaten Earth and had finally decided which side they were on. They came by the dozens, then the hundreds. By the end of the battle, over 800 ships from 60 different species were defending Earth. Wrath Khan watched in disbelief as his advantage vanished. His fleet was powerful, but it could not fight the whole galaxy. "This is impossible," he said. "They have no reason to help the humans." But they did have a reason, and it was simple. Humanity had offered alliance and protection to every species that accepted their hand. They had asked nothing in return except that others do no harm. They had kept their promises for 50 years. Now the galaxy was returning the favor. The battle turned. The Dominion was surrounded. Their ships, which had expected easy victory, found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered. One by one, they surrendered or were destroyed. Wrath Khan's flagship was the last to fall. He refused to surrender. He ordered his crew to fight to the end. They did, and they lost. When it was over, the Dominion fleet existed only as debris. Wrath Khan was dead. The empire he had built on slavery and fear was finished. Admiral Chen looked out at the gathered ships, 800 vessels from 60 species, all hovering in Earth's sky. Some had fought beside humanity for decades. Others had joined only today, but they were all here. She opened a channel. Her voice reached every ship. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for standing with us. Thank you for remembering that kindness matters, that friendship matters, that every life has value." She paused. "The Dominion is gone, but our work is not finished. There are still species out there who suffer. There are still worlds that need help. And as long as that is true, we will keep reaching out. We will keep offering alliance and protection to everyone who accepts our hand." She smiled. "Because that is what we do. Not because we are the strongest, not because we want power, but because we believe in a better galaxy. A galaxy where no one stands alone. A galaxy where everyone has a friend." The responses came flooding in. Agreements, promises, pledges of support. Every species that had come to Earth's defense was now part of something larger than themselves. The Alliance was no longer just 49 species. It was everyone. 5 years after the Battle of Earth, Keth Nora stood once again at a viewing window, looking at the stars. She was very old now, the oldest Vexari alive. She had seen more history than most people could imagine. Behind her, a celebration was happening. The first anniversary of the Galactic Union, the organization that had replaced both the Alliance and the old Assembly. Every species was a member. Every species had a voice. No one was slave. No one was master. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still problems to solve, but they were solved together through talking and cooperation, not war. Admiral Chen had retired after the battle. She lived on Earth now in a small house by the sea. She still received visitors. Delegates from across the galaxy came to thank her, to ask her advice, to simply sit with the woman who had changed everything. Captain Wright, now Admiral Wright, was leading the first expedition to a new galaxy. His fleet carried representatives from 30 different species. They went not to conquer but to explore, to meet new life and offer friendship. And everywhere throughout the galaxy, human ships still traveled. They still offered alliance and protection. They still helped those who needed help. But now they were not alone. Every species helped. Every species protected. Everyone remembered what humanity had taught them. Kindness was strength. Friendship was power. And no one had to stand alone. Kethnara felt a presence beside her. She turned to see a young human, barely old enough for military service. He wore the uniform of the Galactic Union Fleet. "Ambassador," he said with a small bow, "I'm honored to meet you. I've read about you since I was a child." "You are kind to say so." Kethnara studied him. "What is your name?" "Chen, ma'am, David Chen." "A relative of the Admiral." "Her grandson," the young man smiled. "She used to tell me stories about the first contact with the Vexari, about the battles she fought, about the friends she made. She was a great woman." "She was, but she always said the same thing when I told her that." David looked out at the stars. "She said she was not great. She said she just did what any human would have done, offered help to those who needed it, stood beside those who accepted her hand." Kethnara made the Vexari sound of wisdom. "And do you believe her?" "I do." David turned to face her. "Because I see it everywhere. Humans helping others, others helping humans, everyone helping everyone. That's what the Union is. That's what she built. Not she alone, all of us together." "Yes," David smiled, "together." They stood in silence, watching the stars. Outside, the Union fleet patrolled. Inside, delegates from across the galaxy laughed and talked and planned a future that none of their ancestors could have imagined. All because, 55 years ago, humanity had made a simple offer: alliance and protection to every species that accepted their hand. Nothing asked in return except kindness. It had seemed impossible then, a trap, a trick. No species was so generous. No species sacrificed for strangers. But humanity had been different. They had remembered their own history. They had remembered what it felt like to be alone, to be afraid, to need help that never came. And they had decided to be the help they once needed. One by one, species had accepted. One by one, they had learned that the offer was real. And one by one, they had started to make the same offer to others. Until the whole galaxy stood together. Kethnara was very tired. She knew she would not live much longer, but she was content. She had seen the darkness and she had seen the light that followed. "Young Chen," she said. "Yes, Ambassador." "Your grandmother once told me why humans help others. She said you remember being alone, being afraid. She said you remember what it felt like to have someone help you when you needed it most." "Yes, she told me that too. I never fully understood until today." Kethnara placed her hand on his shoulder. "Now I do. You help others because you wish to create a galaxy where no one feels what you once felt. A galaxy where no one is alone. A galaxy where everyone has a hand to hold in the darkness." David nodded. "That's all any of us want, I think. To know that someone cares, to know that we matter." "Yes." Kethnara looked at the stars one last time. "And that is why you won. Not because your weapons were stronger, not because your ships were faster, but because you offered something no one else did. You offered love." The word hung in the air between them. It was not a word Kethnara's people used often. It was not a word that appeared in military reports or diplomatic treaties, but it was the right word. Love for strangers, love for the different, love for anyone who accepted a hand offered in friendship. Humanity had built a galaxy on that love. And it would last forever. The celebration continued behind them. The stars shone ahead. And somewhere at the edge of the galaxy, a human ship was approaching a new species for the first time. It broadcast a message in every known language and many unknown ones. The message was simple. It said only this: "We are the Galactic Union. We offer friendship to all who wish it. We offer protection to all who need it. We ask nothing in return except that you do no harm to others. Will you accept?" And across the void, a voice answered, "Yes."